You're listening and you are watching the Real Anime Podcast. My name is Mohnish, and as always, I'm here with my co host Lewis. Today, we are talking about 5 centimeters per second. And yes, it is the Makoto Shinkai film. Why is it important? Because it recently came out in Malaysian cinemas. Both the live action and the anime were out for a little while in cinemas. We got to check it out. And, it's brought back some memories. In other news, Louis is on a carnivore diet. I am not. But aside from that, we're back onto anime again. And I gotta say, I think we'll be doing anime a little bit more going forward because we do have an exciting lineup of anime themed episodes planned. So today, we are going to be on Makoto Shinkai again. Now, for those of you who are fans of the podcast or have listened to the podcast from time to time, you all know Louis is absolutely no fan of Suzume. He's not really into it, but he does, I think, enjoy 5 centimeters per second. And we know that he cannot stop talking about Garden of Words because who would? If you've seen it, you know what he's talking about. It's a banger of a film. And of course, you've got Your Name, you've got The Place Beyond the Place in Our
A
Early
place
Days, or
promised in our
something
early
like that.
days.
There we go. You see, that's his fandom popping in. But Louis, how have you do? How have you been doing? You've been doing good, yeah.
I'm okay. Been suffering from a few headaches from the carnivore diet. But I mean, if you check out Lewis Talking Fitness, it'll be out whenever this is out. But I'll do a diary on that. But nevertheless, we'll talk about film today. I've been doing all
I
right.
believe I believe it's anime, but
Animation, innit?
this is what happens, kids, when you go on the carnivore diet. Only can think of but aside from that, we're really excited to talk about 5 centimeters per second. Luis, what are your initial impressions of rewatching 5 centimeters per second again? Like just a brief overview.
When watching it again, I was amazed with the film. I love the film, I would say. It's just like how Patrice Evra said, I love this game. But as Louis Knight says, I love this film. I love it because it's the story. Yeah, it's a normal Makoto Shinkai film story, But I love it for the cinematography, the visuals element of the film itself. Because this film came out in 2007, so almost 20 years ago. Can you believe that? Right, and for this film was probably ahead of its time. I love the story elements. The characters I love in this film. Well, it's basically only two characters, more or less, with the exception of the middle part of the film, the part two of the film. Obviously, the two main characters that we all remember from the film is Takaki and Akari, right? These two people who, are best friends from primary school, then one of them moves away. Then, you have one character in Takaki over here who wants to confess his love to her, but then obviously, he couldn't do it because, when you were when we were growing up as guys, we always had that one girl that got away. So there you go. So lesson in life, even though you didn't peak in primary school or secondary school, you peak in life as an adult.
Well, Louis is an enduring mystery. I think he has this life coach thing down pat. So aside from all these carnivore diets and stuff, I'm sure Louis can give you some very good life advice. Do check him out on Louis Talking Fitness or Louis Talking Life or whatever he's got coming up
Maybe
next.
that's a new IG
But
page.
pray for me. But yes, aside from that, I do believe that we all have the one that got away. Heartbreak is a universal theme. And I also do believe that 5 centimeters per second does bring such an interesting story back into our lives. Like me and Louis, we're no longer super spring chickens. That's not to say that we're old, of course. We are still young, but at the same time, we're old enough to have had our separate shares of heartbreak. I shall put it that way, yeah. And love is a minefield. Like now I'm giving life advice, but 5 centimeters per second is such like a interesting story that it just brings this random feelings back to the surface. It's like a film that's like so heartbreaking, like with Takaki and his relationship and how it feels like it's not even a relationship, it's an almost relationship that keeps getting turned around across these 2 3 stories. And while I've made it plain that the second story is my favorite, Lewis does love the first story, and that's his favorite. So, Lewis, talk to me specifically about the first story, Cherry Blossoms, and why to you is it your favorite?
Let me get my notes out. Not 2025, by the way. Okay, so I guess why I really love Cherry Blossom itself, because I relate to the first part of the film a lot, I would say. As what I mentioned in the start, itself. But as when I was watching this film itself, I realized that like when I'm watching this film as an adult, let's say if you take me back to when I was probably about 26 years old, right? Why are you laughing?
I just want the audience to know we are not that old. Huh? When he says take me back to 26 years old, that wasn't long ago. But Luis, go on, go on.
But let's just say, right? Let's just say, when you watch this film as an adult, right? You tend to you tend to see like you tend to relate to a lot of things when you're watching this film. Reason being, when we were younger, when we were oblivious to the world, we didn't know a lot about these things that we did back in the day. You know how something so hard back in the day looks so simple to us now, right? So when I was watching it, I felt like, man, if I could turn back time to when I was 18 years old. You guys will never ever know my age, but maybe I said it in a podcast, but nevertheless. But let's just say that I liked it for like the message that it gives and the like like the sort of flashback that it gives in a way where it just reminds you of like this is who we are when we were young. And that's what I liked about it, I guess. And also like, you had a lot of what ifs moment. And another reason why I like it, because I tell you, this guy, Takaki here, respect to that brother. He went through 2 hours worth of delays on the train. It's just like that time in England where I think it's just another day when your train is delayed in England. For all you know, it could be raining, but it's not raining. But there you go. Nevertheless, that brother over there, he traveled 2 hours or 2 hours plus minus, I don't know, to go see Akari. And I must say, if that guy was older right now, he's got game. That's another reason why I like it, because that's dedication.
Yeah, right there. I mean, okay, now for me, I would say my favorite is the second story, Cosmonaut, which actually follows Takaki once he's in like his other once he's in like another town or something, I believe. And there he meets in his new school, he meets Kanae, who is like my favorite character. But in this particular story, first of all, I love how it begins, by the way, with that amazing sky with all the stars and the clouds moving about and the sun crashing down like a meteor. Like if you look at the beginning of that story, it feels so much like it sort of doesn't fit in 5 centimeters per second, but it works so well in 5 centimeters per second. Why? Because it's it adds a third layer, like a three-dimensional layer to what is just a beautifully told almost love story between Akari and Takaki in the sense that it's like, oh, I feel like these two would be a cool couple, but they don't get together because why? Distance keeps them apart. I feel like that's a compelling love story in its own way, especially if Makoto Shinkai is doing it. But when you add in that element of Takaki and Kanae in that bubble, if you will, where a relationship between them is totally feasible, Kanae's there, Takaki's there, they're in the same class, and she talks about how she studied so hard so she could be in the same class as him, and then how she would wait at the end of school and say bye to her friends and be like, oh, I actually am gonna go home late a bit or something like that. And then she's just hiding, waiting for Takaki to go to his scooter, and then they're like, oh hi, random, like, nice to see you, let's go home together. And it's like, to me, that is what made the story three-dimensional, because we don't actually need that story. It does nothing to further the plot between Takaki and Akari, but Kanae's role adds an extra almost, because Takaki had all the opportunity to be happy. You know, he could have just chosen Kanae and be like, Akari, I love you, but we're too far. You know, you stay in KL, I stay in Kajang.
I-
There you go, another mention for Kajang right there. Kajang Satay, please hit us up. We
And
would love
Clan
to support
Bakute.
there.
I just went there with Chihiro's parents.
That what okay, and you know, we have so many different things here, and but it's like distance separated Takaki and Akari, but distance also gave the opportunity for Takaki and Kanae. And Kanae loves Takaki. You know, you can see she's the main character, and she's talking about how, oh, he's great, and I love him, and I feel all this and that, my heart aches, etc. But she chooses not to tell him because she knows he loves someone else. And I'm just like, Kanae, you deserve so much more. You deserve someone else to make you happy. Like, to be honest with you, I had to pause the film after the second story, because I don't think I could have enjoyed the third story feeling the way I did, because to me, Kanae became the main character,
I agree.
you know?
This film really
In
reminds
that
me of Tottenham Hotspur FC. This film itself is like the what ifs moment, right? It's just like Tottenham. They always talk about what's if, oh, they have more European trophies than Arsenal, right? But then they just say they're going to get relegated this season, probably. And, and you know, the what ifs, it reminds me a lot about Tottenham, right? Because, you know, they could have beat Liverpool in the Champions League. Don't complain, like, oh, you scored a first minute penalty. Yeah, quiet. You lot did not score. So I'm just saying, it's just like Tottenham FC, this film and Tottenham FC, they're like a match made in heaven. It's like the what if moment. I was like, oh, what if, you know, Kane did not play in that final, blah, 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 blah. So there you go.
you know, it's like to me, right? To follow along a little bit with that football analogy, I actually think, as much as I love Akari, I think Kanae was the best option for Takaki in that moment. You know, like, I feel he did what Arsenal did, you know, or are doing. You know what he did?
What's that? What's that?
He bottled it.
Oh! So who's the biggest bottle drop? Tottenham or Arsenal? That's another question that remains to be seen when we
This
speak to
is
Mark.
why, ladies and gentlemen, this is why London is blue. So thank you very much.
And this is why
But
Kajang is the best.
no argument there, huh? But I also will say that, Louis, what do you think is, like, okay, every great director has something about them, right? In some way, shape, or form. For example, even though Martin Scorsese is like a super diverse director in some ways, you know, he's done history, he's done, obviously, he's super famous for his gangster films, and, you know, he's done religious films, he's done, you know, romance, I believe, he's done fantasy, he's got a whole plethora. But then you've got people like Christopher Nolan, where time is his thing, right? But now you got Makoto Shinkai, where love, where romance, you know, that feeling seems to be something that is consistent across all of his, like, films, from Garden of Words to Place Promised in Our Early Days to, of course, 5 centimeters per second. Even, and I will agree not to completely disparage Suzume this way, but I feel like the romance was unnecessary, but it was included in Suzume for some random ass reason. But the point I'm trying to make is, Luis, that every director, even Makoto Shinkai, has that sort of special thing they always keep going back to. But why do you think Makoto Shinkai always goes back to romance? Like, why do you think is his obsession with just this one topic matter, and how did it work for him in 5 centimeters per second?
Just like Tottenham. They get one manager, they sack another manager. But then it doesn't work. But once they get that manager, oh, it's all working. But then after that, it doesn't
Uh,
work. And it repeats. It's just like
with
Suzume.
the last minute of my life, I would not have predicted that answer. I'm telling you
Okay,
right now.
so
I was like, I'm asking a really intelligent question, like, how did Makoto Shinkai do this, do that with the romance? It's like Tottenham. I'm like, what? What is he talking about? Tottenham. It's like, what does Tottenham have to do with romance? The romance is when I remember they beat some other team and then after they bottled it again.
it's like Ajax, they beat Ajax, but then lost to us in the final. But nevertheless, Makoto Shinkai. Makoto Shinkai himself, right? As we get deeper, deeper, and deeper into Makoto, into Makoto Shinkai, right? Yeah, he's known for his romance. When it comes to his romance film, he knows how to do a good job with it. It's just like Arsenal bottoming the
Okay,
league every 4 seasons.
okay, but why? Why does he like romance so
Okay,
much?
I mean
Like,
like
why can't the guy like whether the guy does sci-fi, whether the guy does fantasy, it's always fantasy, romance, sci-fi, romance. Kenapa? Like,
you've already seen Suzume already, and that was his attempt.
okay, but like, okay, but before we get to Suzume, why does it work for you?
Okay, I
Because
remember. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know I read it. I read somewhere by Makoto Shinkai. He's known for his romance. Yes, we all know that. I remember. Correct me. Like when he was younger, he got rejected by someone. Then I guess he used filmmaking as a way to help, be able to express his emotions with romance
okay,
films.
I mean I get that, but like to subject the rest of us to a never-ending aria of romance in all his films just because he got rejected one time. Can you imagine if he got rejected twice? I'm
I wouldn't
like,
be surprised if he did.
yeah, okay, like, but for me personally, it works in the sense that basically, 5 centimeters per second is a romance film. Garden of Words is a romance film. A Place Promised in Our Early Days is sci-fi, but it's also romance. And I don't know why, but Suzume is fantasy, but also romance. One, all of these, like, Your Name, another one, fantasy, romance. But I feel like they work because he's really good at exploring human connection in this way. Now, the way it doesn't work, which I'm sure you're going to be happy to talk about, is
Oh yeah.
because the way it doesn't work is when you have Suzume, because Suzume, if just the two characters didn't need to have a romantic connection, if they were just friends, I would have been totally fine. But you had to add this extra layer of romance into it for no reason, and it's like, why? You already had something that has solid genre, that is fantasy, that you can do and you know how to do it, but you have to go and add in the same elements from your other films, which is romance, and you have to bring that in for some reason. You had to bring that element in and ruin the film. Now, I don't think that the romance solely is the reason this film is bad. I think there are other reasons that Suzume didn't quite work, but the romance certainly could have been an easy thing to take out just so you don't ruin that, because I promise you, if that's not where the problem started, that's where they fucking ended, right? Because you have no reason to bring in romance. The only reason is all your other films got romance. So why? I just add in romance to this film just to make sure that all my films feel the same, right? And I feel in that moment, Suzume made, Makoto Shinkai's films feel one dimensional. Because as much as I love his films, that one thing he did by going back to the same genre, by doing that again, made his films feel random as
Yeah.
and like discardable.
Um,
But Luis, tell us what's your problem with Suzume? Like, of course, briefly because we're on 5 centimeters per second, but
yeah.
like
Okay. I
just
get it.
Suzume, like why
All
doesn't
right.
the romance
Okay.
work
Let
for
me
you
let
then?
me use other films as an example for the relationship. Let me try answer this seriously. No talk, no jokes now. All right.
No, I mean just stick with Suzume for
Okay. Okay.
now. Like
All right.
you just
I'll
go
give
on
you.
Suzume very
Okay.
quickly.
Suzume did not work because, like, for example, you have Suzume herself, right? If you had got rid of the romance, this film would be fantastic, right? Because you have the amount of fantasy, you have a lot of fantasy elements, right? You had the talking chair, you had this magical door where it takes you into another universe, blah 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 blah. If they have kept to that, it would have been perfect. Now I understand why he wanted to do romance because I'll give you. I know it's purely Suzume, but let me give you a film example for comparison analysis. All right, take A Place Promised in Our Early Days. Now now that film is sci-fi. Okay, not really fantasy, but I guess he probably thought to himself, if I manage to do a film like, let's say, A Place Promised in Our Early Days, for example, or Your Name to a certain extent, where he thinks that, like, hey, look, I've done many genres before, and I know that romance is my best thing. I'll be able to do it for this genre itself. But unfortunately, that's not the way how it works, right? I think he just knew himself, saying that, like, hey, if I'm able to do a genre where I match sci-fi with romance, which I don't think is, like, not to say common, maybe it is now common, I don't know. I don't really watch a lot of sci-fi romance. I guess he just decided, like, hey, if I can do any other romance where it matches with another genre, why not this be the film? Now, if you're talking about the film before Suzume, it was Weathering with You. Remember that film? It was like more or less like fantasy. Well, yeah, you could say fantasy a bit. You had the girl calling the mambang to like stop it raining or whatnot.
No,
But
no, it's definitely fantasy.
okay. It's fantasy. So I guess I don't know what's his idealization with romance itself, right? I wish that, yeah, I get it. All directors have specialties in their own genres, and that's good. But I guess sometimes when this could be the first ever film where this is the first ever film where he tries his best to go out of the romance genre, but then again it came back in again. And Suzume just did not live up to expectations. I mean, I remember when it came out, the visuals looked amazing. The music could be better. I mean, I think the music was the saving grace of the film. But I think that the story just fell flat because, like, I just did not feel connected to Suzume herself. Right? That's one of the things I lacked on the connection with the film. Visuals,
Yeah.
yeah, is stunning, but there was no personal connection with the main character, like how you feel with the film that we are talking about, 5 centimeters per second. You feel the connection with the two main characters, but in Suzume, you do not. That's all I have to
Yeah,
say.
I mean, like, on a final point for this, I think we actually had a minor discussion earlier about this, but Makoto Shinkai tends to do better in shorter films than he does in longer
Mm,
films. All right.
I
Now
100% agree.
I'm gonna just start us off, but Louis is gonna take us home for this. All right.
Oh,
So, like, me and Louis have talked about our love for Garden of Words. You know, that's one of those films that's like, oh wow, this is definitely like 45 minutes, amazing, and then you've got 5 centimeters per second, where it's three stories done in an hour roughly. And then you've got Your Name, which is the first time he really properly succeeded with a long, well, more than 1 hour for sure. I mean, there's no way you can look at Your Name and say that that film is not a success. You know, like, whether it's your favorite film or not is not the point. I mean, you can look at that film and say, you know what, the story is fairly enjoyable, the music is amazing, as always, the visuals are amazing, and he has that thing done for him. But then you've got Weathering with You, and then you have Suzume, which are not by a long shot horrible films, but they just lack what Makoto Shinkai used to deliver so beautifully, which was succinct, unique storytelling within a certain amount of time with a beautiful animation. And there's even a 1 minute short film he did. I forget the name, but if you guys Google it, you'll know. I actually think that film, even with dialogue and just done in 1 minute, is about a student taking her exams. And it's amazing, you know? But if you look at the longer films he's done, you don't typically get the same feeling, because it feels like he's being overindulgent with things. He's taking too much of, the Makoto Shinkai world, and sort of just, the story could be done in a quicker pace, but he's doing it, like, I'm gonna do two scenes here extra, I'm gonna do two scenes there. Why, I don't know, but it looks beautiful. It looks beautiful, but when you're looking and when you're watching and you're like, I don't know, is this the way to go? But Louis, your points. What do you think about this?
Let me take a good example of the film Your Name. Now, this is a perfect film where if it was capped at an hour 30, I would say this Your Name will probably be better than Garden of Words, right? But however, the reality is it's not. Now, let me paint you a picture. I'm pretty sure 99% of you have watched Garden of the Woods, Your Name, right? Almost everyone here has probably watched it. You've watched it. My dogs have watched it. They watched it with me that day. And this film itself, I think we all can agree was, I forgot the Mitsuha and there's another one, Mitsuha and the other character, what's his name? The boy character, Mitsuha and Tanoha or something, right?
To be honest,
I forgot the name. I
But
forgot the character's name, but Mitsuha and the boy. So when you have the moment where Mitsuha was with the boy in the mountain, the two of them.
Taki.
Taki. Yes. Taki. I was about to say Takis. Taki, yes. All right. See, it's carnivore talking to me. But nevertheless, if let's say, for example, you had that moment where they were on the mountain together, where they actually met each other, you end the film, perfect, done, end of the story. That film would have been a solid 10 out of 10. But no, you have to add in like the all of the element, like the Japanese folklore elements, where they drink the sake itself. Then it takes you to another world. Then you get to know more about the girl's life, where the mom passed away at a young age, and then the grandmother had to take care of them. Then you had the tsunami warning. I'm just like, brother, if let's say you made this film into part 1, part 2, maybe it would be nice. But I think that's the problem when you give a guy too much to play with, to the point where sometimes he doesn't know when it could be contained. Let's just
Less
say
is more.
less is more. We just want it to be less is more, not more is less, right? Less is more, right? We want the film to just be like straight to the point, nice to watch, and end of story.
And also only because he's been so good at it, not because we think that's the best way to do it, but because there's literal evidence that he's good at it.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
much better in that. Yeah, you can watch any of his early films.
I've watched all
you
of it.
tell me whether you prefer Garden of Words or you prefer Suzume. And I'll tell you right now, across the board, Makoto Shinkai's visuals are always going to be top.
I agree.
Even Suzume, Weathering with You, beautiful films to look at. It's just which one would you rather give your time to, So again, and also I will say this to cap us off: Makoto Shinkai is not the kind of director you can binge watch his films left, right, and center, because after a while they're gonna get fucking tiring because it's all romance, right? It's just that the guy knows what he's doing when he has limits, creative limits put on him, So yeah, but aside from that, thank you all for listening. It's been quite a fun podcast, with our football fans being so serviced, But thank you all for joining us as we go deeper and deeper and deeper into the lore of Makoto Shinkai. Yeah, and aside from that, y'all take it easy lah, and we'll see you in the next episode where we will be talking about a anime that is notoriously difficult to watch but has come out this year and really knocked us for a loop. But until then, thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. We really appreciate your support. Now we're at 172 streams and downloads. Thank you all for the amazing support. We hope to get to 200 by the end of the year, hopefully. It really means a lot that you guys are actually actively supporting us and putting in your time and everything. So thank you all for that, and we really appreciate it. And we'll see you in the next one.